Well, welcome to a special edition of Crawford County Outdoors. We are at the Woodcock Creek Nature Center today, and Heather Flick is joining us here. So tell us what's going to happen today.
Yeah, my name's Heather Flick. I'm the Environmental Education Specialist with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. And today I'm going to be talking about the owls of Pennsylvania. So we have 5 permanent residents that live year-round here in Pennsylvania, and then we have 5 migrating owl species that come in winter. So we're going to learn all about owl adaptations and also their calls.
So this is a big deal.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. I see owls all the time. You know, I have woods in my backyard, in my side yard or whatever, and I see owls all the time. And it's like, you know, so when I heard about this, I thought, well, I want to come and learn some details.
Yeah.
Okay.
Owls are really fascinating.
I'm looking forward to hearing you explaining everything.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Very good.
So my name is Heather Flick, and previously I was a wildlife technician for the Pennsylvania Game Commission. I actually recently switched roles. I'm now the Environmental Education Specialist. So my position with the Game Commission is all of our outreach and education programs. So I get to come out to community partners like this and do presentations. I go into schools, I do hunting, trapping education, a little bit of everything. It's a new position in our region. So we're looking for different opportunities to get out there and teach all ages about what we do as an agency, as well as some of the wildlife that we manage and protect. So going into that, like I said, I'm with the Pennsylvania Game Commission. Our mission as an agency is to manage and protect our wildlife, so our mammals and birds, and kind of protect those habitats where they reside, while also promoting hunting and trapping for current generations and future generations. So we manage, I like to say, everything with fur and feathers, or the warm and fuzzy. We do not do any of our cold and scaly. So no reptiles, no amphibians, and no fish. That all falls under our Fish and Boat Commission. So we're separate agencies. So we are warm and fuzzy, our birds and our mammals. And that leads me to today's topic. We are going to be talking about birds, and more specifically, we're talking about our owls of Pennsylvania. So owls are probably one of my favorite groups of birds, just because they're so unique in their adaptations, or kind of those characteristics that allow them to survive in their environment. And in Pennsylvania, we're pretty fortunate because we have 8 different species that can be found in our state. 5 of them are permanent residents found year-round, and 3 of them kind of visit us in the winter time. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those specific species, but first I want to talk about those unique owl adaptations. So of course, when you think of owls, you think of the night hunters. They're known for being nocturnal, so they're active during the night and they're catching their prey at night. They have very specialized features that allow them to be such efficient hunters, and they are considered birds of prey, or raptors. So some of our other birds of prey or raptors are going to be eagles, hawks, osprey, our falcons, and then owls also fall into that category too. And we'll talk about those characteristics that make them a bird of prey. And then I did mention that they have some very unique adaptations for survival and to allow them to be so effective at hunting at night. And I mentioned we have 8 species in Pennsylvania, so we're going to go through those. I also brought a few of our mounts over. I have 6 species with me. 2 of them we do not have a mount for. So at the very end, feel free to get a close-up look at those mounts and actually see the size, the feather coloration, and those unique characteristics. So first thing we're going to look at when we're looking at owl anatomy or adaptations are those giant talons that they have on their feet. And all birds of prey have talons, and those talons are used to catch their prey because they're eating live animals, so they need a really efficient method for dispatching their prey. So they have those large talons. Something unique about an owl's foot is they have 4 toes. They typically will catch their prey with 2 in the front and 2 in the back, but that 4th toe they're actually able to rotate, so they can have 3 toes in the front and 1 in the back as needed, or they can rotate that last one and have 2 and 2. So they kind of have that ability to rotate that 1 toe, and that can give them a better grip on their prey, especially if they're grabbing something larger, and it can help them kind of balance as well when they're perched. You'll also notice on all of our mounts, a unique characteristic of owls versus like our hawks and our eagles is that they have feathers that go all the way down to their toes. So hawks and eagles, osprey, they don't have feathers on their toes at all, but with our owl species, they do. Scientists believe there's a couple different reasons why they might have feathers that extend down that long. One is that they're hunting at night, and those feathers kind of help provide extra insulation when the temperatures drop. Also, it can help protect their legs from their prey. And then third, those feathers are also specialized to help keep them silent as they're flying. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the adaptations a little bit more. Next, when you're looking at the head of the owl, you have that sharp hooked beak. And that's another characteristic that all of our birds of prey have. And they need that sharp hooked beak once again because they're eating live animals. So they need that beak to be nice and sharp. Owls typically will eat their prey whole, unless it's a larger prey item like a rabbit or a squirrel, then they'll rip into it. But any like small rodents, voles and shrews, owls will typically eat them whole. And then, of course, when we're talking about owls, everyone kind of knows an owl is known for, being able to turn their head all the way around. Do you guys think that's true? Can they really go 360 degrees? They could do 360 one time in their life, I like to say. But normally it's going to be about 270 degrees. So humans, we have 7 vertebrae in our necks. So there's little bones on the back of your neck. We have 7, and that allows us to kind of look 90 degrees in either direction, so about 180 degrees total. An owl has double the amount of bones in their neck, so they have 14, and that really gives them the flexibility to be able to turn 270 degrees. So they're able to kind of look to their left, directly behind them, and all the way to that other shoulder, and they can do that in both directions. So they need that flexibility because their eyes are actually fixed in place. So I like to always say, like humans, we can move our eyes around. So if you keep your head straight and look forward, you can move your eyes to the left, you can look up, you can look down, you can look to the right. And that's really easy for us to do. An owl cannot do that. They have to turn their head to be able to look in different directions. So that's why they need that flexible neck to do that. And then also talking about the owls, they kind of have this other unique feature called a nictitating membrane. It is actually a 3rd eyelid that kind of comes across, and in the video, it's going to play on repeat. You'll see kind of a black line come across the owl's eyes as it blinks, and that is that 3rd eyelid. It's a clear eyelid that'll come over, and it helps just protect their eyes. So at nighttime and when they're flying, they can actually blink and have that eyelid come over, and it helps protect them from getting scratched by branches as they're flying through trees, scratched from their prey. So it kind of is just that extra protection they have. So getting into eyesight, owls are known for those large eyes. I think that's the first thing that people kind of comment on or notice about an owl. And in this picture, we have a great horned owl, and they just have those huge yellow eyes. And I mentioned that they are fixed in the skull, so they can't move them, and that's why they have to turn their necks. But those large eyes give our owl species very, very superb binocular vision, which basically means that they can use both of their eyes to see something at the same time. So we have binocular vision. We're using both of our eyes to be able to look around. A lot of animals will have their eyes more on the sides of their heads, and they're not able to focus both eyes on the same object at the same time. A lot of those animals with their eyes facing more on the side are going to be your prey species, because they're always looking around for those predators. Well, our owls are predators, so they have those big eyes that face forward to be able to find their prey. And they can find their prey at night because they have a lot of rods in their eyes. So we have cones and rods in our eyes. Humans have a lot of cones, and cones are what allow us to see color. Owls have more rods, and that allows them to see more kind of shapes and movement, but then they can't really see color that well. So when you're a nighttime hunter, color doesn't really matter. You want to be able to see shapes and movement so you can find your prey at night. And why, I kind of skipped over this earlier, but does anyone know why owls hunt at night and not during the day? Any guesses?
Most predators are out.
So there's a lot of different predators and prey items out at night, so when you think about what they're eating. But it's because they kind of live in the same habitats as our hawks and our eagles. So they're kind of in that same ecological niche. So to avoid competition for food, they're gonna hunt at night so they can coexist with like our other birds of prey, like our hawks, our falcons, and our eagles. So they're not kind of competing with those birds. So they kind of evolved to hunt at night to be able to survive because they're not going to be competing with those other birds that are found in the area. They also have extremely large retinas. Once again, that's going to evolve to help them be excellent nighttime hunters. And then scientists say that their vision is about 50 to 100 times better than humans. So being perched up in a tree at nighttime, say they're perched about 20 to 30 feet up in the tree, they're able to pinpoint exactly where a mouse is, just based on, that excellent eyesight. But eyesight's not the only thing they rely on. Hearing is also really important to our owls too. And some owls actually rely more on hearing than they do their eyesight. So on the left, we have a barn owl here, and on the right, we have a barred owl. And you'll notice that both of these owls have what we call like a facial disc. So a barn owl is kind of more of a heart-shaped, and a barred owl is kind of more of like an oval or a circle. And you'll be able to see that on our mounts that we have. But those feathers are specialized. Yes, those feathers are specialized to help funnel the sound in. So they're turning their heads listening to be able to gather that sound, and those sound waves kind of like bounce off that facial disc, and they're able to hear exactly where that prey animal is coming. So if we were to go outside and we stand outside and we hear kind of like a rustling in the leaves, we can probably pinpoint a general area where it's coming from, but we would not be able to get down to the inch of where that prey item is. These guys can do that based on their adaptations. Another unique thing about owls, especially our barn owls, their ears are actually asymmetrical, which means that instead of being directly across from each other, they're offset slightly. So one ear hole is actually a little bit higher than the other one, and that allows them to hear noises at different levels. And then they can kind of pinpoint in exactly where that sound is coming from, exactly where that mouse is, based on hearing at different times and kind of moving that head, getting the sound waves to hit off that facial disc again. So just very, very incredible creatures, based off being able to hunt at night, not even see their prey. They can hear and locate exactly where their target is.
Can they all find prey like deep under the snow, or is that only like snowy owls?
They can. So they will be able to kind of hear prey under the snow. So like our great horned owls, they'll be able to hear them. But sometimes in the winter, they might shift over to going for some larger prey items that are out. But yeah, they're able to hear prey under the snow. All right, so next is feathers. So their feathers, I mentioned earlier, those feathers on the feet are very unique. It kind of helps to make them silent flyers, but really we're going to be looking at their wing feathers. Their wing feathers have been adapted to where when they're flapping those feathers, they virtually make no sound. And that's because on the leading edge of their wing, so this leading edge here, they kind of have like serrated teeth, and that allows the air to pass through. On the trailing edge here, you can also kind of see that serration, so that makes them pretty much silent flyers. So I like to kind of say, if you take your hands and keep your fingers together and kind of flap them next to your ears, you can hear the air moving, but if you open up your hands and do it again, you can't really hear it as much. Of course, our fingers have not been adapted to be like an owl's feather, but it's a good kind of example of being able to hear that air pass through. So that allows them to, once again, hunt at night, because that prey animal is never going to know what's coming for them, since they're pretty much silent. And you can just see in the video with the barn owl that those wings are just so powerful, and those wing beats are so powerful, and that they are just excellent flyers. So they're kind of the silent killers of the night.
I'm impressed with how long the wings are compared to the body. Like when you're showing.
Yes.
Look how long.
Yes, a lot of people don't realize about how big wingspan is for owls and actually birds in general. So humans, our arm span is pretty much the same size as our height. So from head to toe, fingertip to fingertip, we're pretty square. With the bird, they have much shorter bodies and much larger wings. And that's really just going to allow them to be more efficient flyers. So if you think about like a plane as well, so a lot of planes are actually modeled off of birds and have been modeled off of like peregrine falcons and things too, kind of just because of that shape. They're more aerodynamic. And the last thing to kind of talk about that's unique with feathers is their ability to camouflage. And the perfect example are our screech owls. And we have, actually, there are probably screech owls in this area here. When I was at Tamarack, I did release a few screech owls on the property here. That was probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. But they are a very common owl. But they're so small and their camouflage is so great, it's often hard to see them out in the trees. And I'll talk a little bit more about our screech owls, but I just wanted to mention that a lot of the coloration you see of our owls, the screech owl is the little one next to the barred owl on the same branch right there. Yeah. You'll notice a lot of our owls kind of have that pattern and coloration to blend in with their surroundings. But why the screech owl is kind of the most notable is because they're one of the smaller owl species, and being a smaller owl means that there's probably some larger owls out there that might be a predator. So they really need to blend in because they're not only a predator themselves, but they're also a prey item. So you can just see in this photo here how if that owl were to close its yellow eyes, it'd probably blend right in with that tree. So now we're going to get into actually talking about our 8 different owl species. I mentioned earlier that 5 of those owls are permanent residents in Pennsylvania, and then 3 species are our winter visitors. So the first one, and I think I have a soft spot in my heart, this is probably my favorite owl. This is our great horned owl. And they are one of our largest owls that we have in Pennsylvania. They are also called the tiger of the sky. And you might be able to see either in the video or on our mount, they kind of have that orangey brown color, almost like tiger stripes throughout them. But also they're just some pretty aggressive birds when it comes to hunting. Does anyone know what a great horned owl, one of their favorite prey items is? They'll go for rabbits and chipmunks and squirrels, but one of their favorite prey items is a skunk. So skunks are nocturnal, of course, and these owls are going to be out at night, but also owls don't really have a sense of smell, so it does not affect our owls. So great horned owls will often go for skunks because they're a nice large prey item, and they're, you know, pretty effective hunters. So, and that smell does not bother them whatsoever. On the photo here, we have 3 great horned owl nestlings. So great horned owls and owls in general, they typically will nest. They'll either build like a stick nest. Some great horned owls, they will live in a stick nest, but normally they're going to be nests built by crows or other birds, or cavities that have already been done. So they're not actually building a nest, they're kind of using a nest or cavity that's already established. For owls, most of the time, they're gonna have probably 2 to 4, or lay 2 to 4 eggs, because just the more young that they have, they do tend to breed and nest earlier in the year, so the more young they have, the better chance of survival. Right now is actually our breeding season for great horned owls. That's why I chose to talk about owls today, because great horns they nest and breed the earliest out of our owl species. So typically about December, January, you can really start to hear great horned owls outside because they're going to be calling and trying to find a mate for that nesting season. And then they will start to lay their eggs pretty much right about now. So early February, mid-February to mid-March is when they will lay their eggs. And then the eggs hatch in about 3 to 4 weeks. So a month from now, we might start seeing some great horned owl nestlings around. But it's just the perfect time right now to do an owl program because these guys are out there calling, they're out there nesting, and they can tend to be a little aggressive if you get too close to a nest. So I will recommend, if you see a nesting great horned owl, observe from afar. They will do whatever they can to protect that nest.
Is that taken at Presque Isle?
I'm not sure where that photo was taken.
Looks like the same tree that I got them.
Okay.
Is that typically how they would be found, those young ones? How do they kind of hide them?
Yeah, typically they will use like hollowed out trees like that, or sometimes they'll use abandoned stick nests from like crows and herons and other birds. But really, you know, mom and dad are going to do a great job protecting them in the nest. So they're pretty good parents. Oh, before I get into our barred owl, I want to go back and just play our great horned owl call so that way you all know what to listen for. So these are your typical hoot owls. So when you think of an owl or think of a hoot, this is what you're probably thinking of. All right, so the next owl is our barred owl. These are also pretty common in Pennsylvania. They tend to live in habitats that are more like marshes and swamps, you know, some more wooded type habitats. They feed a lot on small rodents. They will also feed on amphibians, even fish and crayfish. And if they eat too many crayfish, actually sometimes their feathers can get a pink tint to it, just like flamingos. So if they really are, if they really are hunting a lot of crayfish, sometimes they get that pink hue. They are called a barred owl because of that barring on the neck. So you see those stripes going across, those are the barring, so the barred owl. And I will play the call of the barred owl. This one is also pretty easy to identify because their call sounds like it's saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" So we'll play that. So these owls are pretty vocal as well, so you can often hear them. So like I said, those swampy areas or areas near a marsh or a creek nearby, that's where you're going to tend to find these birds. Barred owls are also one of our 2 owl species in Pennsylvania that has dark eyes. So the barred owl and the barn owl are the only 2 that have those very dark brown eyes that look like they're almost all black. All of our other owl species have yellow eyes. So then we're getting into our eastern screech owl, which is actually the other little owl I talked about earlier with the camouflage. They are the 2nd smallest owl in Pennsylvania, and we actually have 2 color phases in our state. So we have the gray phase, which is what our mount is, and then this video here shows the red phase. So they're more of that rufous or red coloration. And scientists say about 1/3 of our screech owls in Pennsylvania are the red phase, and about 2/3 are going to be the gray phase. So gray phase is more common, but we still have the red phase in our state. And you typically will see these small birds in wooded areas, but they're also much better at adapting to suburban areas as well. So you can find them in local parks, you can find them in your backyard. The gray phase are pretty much going to tend to stick to those deciduous trees because of the color of the bark. They want to blend in. And then our red phase are going to stick more towards the conifers because the bark of conifers has a little bit more of that red tint. So they're going to pick and choose trees based on their coloration. So that helps them camouflage into their environment. And also they have those short little ear tufts on their heads. Those ear tufts are not their actual ears. Owls don't have any external ears. They only have openings on the sides of their head underneath all of those feathers. So those ear tufts are used to help camouflage and also for species identification, so they can kind of identify other species of owls. But whenever they are threatened or maybe a predator's nearby, they might stand up really tall and get really skinny and kind of flip those ear tufts up to kind of look like little branches in the trees sticking out. Or they might kind of squat down and puff out to make themselves look bigger. So those are kind of their defense mechanisms.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So instinctually they know. In other words, if I were a blonde and somebody here were a brunette and we were trying to find a tree, but we were an owl, our parents wouldn't have said, hey, you're blonde, hide in this tree. Like, how do they?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, how do they know what color they are and how to blend in? Yes, exactly. So that is something that I'm sure a scientist out there probably has researched. I have not found that answer. But you know, I think it's just going to be that instinct in them. You know, some things we just can't ever figure out. And that might be one of those things, but...
Is it the parents? Do they ever...
Well, and so the thing is with screech owls and their parents, gray screech owl parents can have red young.
Oh,
yes.
That's even tricky.
So I'm not exactly sure like how that works and how they're able to figure out, you know, what trees to stay in based on their color. You know, that's a really... I'm curious now to see if there are any studies like that out there. I know what I'm going to be researching tomorrow in the office.
You can let me know which one.
Yeah. And then with their young, whenever they have their young, because our screech owls are the second smallest owl, their young are about the size of cotton balls when they hatch. So I just think that's adorable. A lot of people do mistaken screech owls as great horned owl babies. Because they are so little, you know, they're only, you know, 8 or 9 inches tall. Like I said, their young are the size of cotton balls when they hatch. So if you do see a little owl, and it kind of looks like our screech owl, it's probably an adult. It's not going to be a great horned owl baby because once again, you know, great horned owls are nesting now. So their young are going to hatch in about a month and a half, maybe into April. Birds of prey typically reach their full size within 3 months. So they grow really fast, and they're gonna lose those baby feathers and grow in their adult feathers within kind of that 3-month period. So. Oh, thank you for reminding me. Yes, screech owls also are very, very vocal, and their call is very unique. A quick story, I don't want to get too far off track, but when I was a kid, we used to have campfires in our backyard, and we had woods in our backyard, and we would always hear this strange noise, and it's going to be the noise I play, and like, my parents didn't know what it was at the time, and we always used to come up with ideas of what it was, but as a kid, we were always like, oh, it's a monster. Something's out there in the woods to get us. We never knew. And when I got into this field of working with wildlife, I was like, that has been a screech owl growing up. My whole childhood, we had screech owls, and I always thought it was a monster in the woods. Yeah, so a lot of people compare that screech to like a horse whinnying, and I grew up in a neighborhood, so I knew we didn't have horses around, so that's why I thought it was always a monster. But yeah, so their name, the eastern screech owl, they kind of have that whinny or that screech kind of call.
Almost sounds like a squeaky door.
Yeah. So next we have the barn owl, and I mentioned earlier that our barn owls are kind of known for that heart-shaped facial disc. And you can see them here in this video, and then we also have a photo of 3 nestling barn owls. I always think the nestlings kind of look like little aliens until they grow in their adult feathers. Barn owls are not as common in our state, especially as they once were decades ago. Their populations are on the decline, and unfortunately. A lot of that is due to habitat loss, so not having the proper areas to hunt for their prey and for nesting and breeding. So given their name, a barn owl, they are typically found near farm fields, and they will often nest in barns. So they are a cavity nester, so they nest in a cavity. So barns, silos, old like wood buildings, things like that, where you have a lot of like pastures and farmlands around that aren't actively like disturbed or actively farmed. And in Pennsylvania, we just don't have a lot of that anymore. It's kind of farming's on the decline. You know, there's a lot of urbanization, so that's kind of taking away the habitat that these birds need. Being that they live in barns and silos and near farms, they're gonna prey heavily on rodents. So mice, voles, shrews. So farmers really like having them around because it helps prevent rodents from getting to their crops. So actually in 2006, the Pennsylvania Game Commission started a barn owl conservation initiative because we noticed that their numbers have been declining. So we are asking the public for barn owl sightings. And that's something that still goes on. Our biologists like to record when barn owls are found, if there are nests nearby on property owners, on their lands, and then also just being able to educate those landowners, or if they have to tear down an old barn because it's falling down and unsafe, we can provide a barn owl nesting box, so we can replace the structure, give them a place to nest. So if you have any farmlands near you or know someone that may have barn owls on their property, our biologists are always looking for new barn owl sightings. That way they can monitor the population. They will actually band the youngsters, so that way we know where they're traveling, kind of where they're dispersing to, and then if they themselves are having more young. So hopefully through this initiative, We can find some more nesting locations of barn owls and then be able to help better protect them and get them the habitat they need. And even if that just means putting up a nesting box for them, that can be very beneficial. Now we're going to talk about I forgot to play the barn owl call. So they kind of have this like hissing, like a high-pitched hiss type call.
It's amazing how different these are.
Yes, yeah. So then we have our saw-whet owl. This is the smallest owl that we have in Pennsylvania. So they're even smaller than our screech owl. I do not have a mount for this owl, but as you can see in the photo, it's about the size of a pop can. So they're pretty small. They are found year-round. They're gonna like more forested areas, so they're not really gonna be found kind of in your urban or suburban areas or your local parks. They're gonna be more of like the heavily forested areas. I do not have a call on my computer, but I brought our identifier so I can play the saw-whet call. Oh, yeah, for you.
Northern saw-whet, a repetitive whistle. Toot, 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 toot.
I had it on the wrong one.
He's right, it's a repetitive whistle.
Yes, yeah. So very, very different from our other owl species.
Crazy, these are crazy.
We do a lot of banding with saw-whet owls. So they'll actually go out and band them just once again to look at populations, kind of see where they're moving, where they're nesting, and kind of get more information that way. So the photo on the right here, that was actually whenever they were banding saw-whets. Then we have the short-eared owls. So those first 5 owls I talked about are our permanent residents in Pennsylvania. The last 3 that I'm going to talk about are winter visitors. So the first was the short-eared owl, and it's called the short-eared owl because it actually has small little ear tufts on its head that are pretty short. They also kind of have a pretty prominent facial disc as well. I have a short-eared owl mount over here to show you the size of them. And short-eared owls are actually, it's the one right in the middle, yep. And short-eared owls are actually endangered in our state. So they are on Pennsylvania's endangered species list. So they're actually protected under our wildlife code. So we do get them. They tend to kind of breed and thrive in those grassland and marsh habitats. And unfortunately, we do not have a lot of those undisturbed grasslands left. And that's why they're endangered in our state. I will say this winter has been really good for seeing short-eared owls at Pymatuning, so the Pennsylvania Game Commission's Pymatuning management area. Almost every evening, right as the sun is setting, I think one day our photographer was out there getting photos. I think there were 7 or 8 of them out there at once, all hunting the fields. And then actually farther south down near Grove City, there's been 4 or 5 down in that area too. So it seems like when we do get short-eared owls in our area, they're going to be at those undisturbed grasslands, so kind of like those farm fields that aren't heavily utilized and not a lot of human disturbance, or like reclaimed strip mines are really good for that kind of grassland habitat. And like I said, we just don't have a lot of that habitat left in our state, and that's why it's hard for these birds, and that's why they're on the endangered species list.
Where are they the rest of the year when they're not visiting our fair state?
Yeah, so they're going to be farther north.
Kind of like Canada.
Yes, yep.
Really cool.
So
Did they get them out of Guy's Mills, out the...
I don't know. I just know of, like I said, the ones that I live down in Grove City, so I actually went out to go see these guys the one night. And then I've heard from my coworkers that they're out at Tuning too, and some of my wildlife photographer friends. So I'm not sure, but if the habitat's there, there's a chance that they might be there. So, and they're gonna hunt a lot of rodents, and that's what the one is eating in the video. So once again, mice, rats, voles, shrews, anything like that that's going to be scurrying through those grasslands. And I will play the call.
Sounds like a cat.
Sounds like he's sneezing.
Yeah.
Sounds like a little cat.
Yeah, a little cat, yeah. That's amazing.
That's weird how we did it.
It sounds like a cat.
We then have the long-eared owl. So you can see it has these very long ear tufts, and I do not have a long-eared owl mount. They have these very long ear tufts, and they're also a winter visitor as well. So we can see them throughout the winter. They are actually a threatened species in our state. So the short-eared owls are endangered. Our long-eared owls are threatened. And once again, that's going to be a lot due to like your habitat that they need.
Is there a reason the guy on the right looks so fuzzy like a slipper?
So this is going to be a nestling. So that one would have just hatched. And so when, what?
Kind of like the cotton ball.
Yes, yep, but bigger. So they're going to be a little bit bigger. But yes, whenever owls first hatch, they are covered in their downy feathers. So these white little fluffy feathers, they kind of look like cotton balls. I like to say they look like lint from the dryer or a Muppet. So.
Yeah. Now, do the young always have the same color eyes as the adults, or can they be different like the hawks?
They're going to be the same color, yeah. So they're similar to the great horned owl in that they have more of a hoot, but it's just like a single hoot rather than the great horned owl's hoot. So these birds are probably, I would say, one of the rarest birds and owls in Pennsylvania, just because we don't know a whole ton about where they're nesting or where to kind of find them throughout the state. Our Pennsylvania tends to be one like kind of on their southern range whenever they're kind of migrating. So that's why they're not, you know, we don't really know a whole lot of them. So this is kind of the farthest south they tend to go. And then a snowy owl. So this is our last winter visitor, and I do have a mount of a snowy owl. Snowy owls come down from the Arctic tundra whenever there is an eruption of prey or lemmings. They eat lemmings. So they kind of come down, and those eruption cycles tend to be about every 4 to 5 years is when we'll see kind of like large groups of snowy owls coming down. Most commonly, you can see them at Presque Isle because they're going to be found in habitats that resemble like an Arctic tundra. So beaches, reclaimed strip mines, sometimes like airports and things like that. With our snowy owls, the males typically are going to be more white in color, and the females tend to have more coloration and kind of more of that kind of rocky look to them.
So is this a female?
I would guess, but I honestly don't know. I'm not sure where that mount came from. But based on, I mean, it's pretty, you know, it could be a male. So males can still have some of that coloration, but if you see one that's pretty all white, that's pretty, pretty sure that's a male. So
This guy here is?
No, I'm saying like when they're all white like that, it's gonna be a male. Yeah, no, that's okay. So we have had some snowy owls spotted this year up at Presque Isle, but I haven't really heard recently of any more. They're typically down in our area like December into January, and then like we don't really see them after that. So I know there was at least 1 or 2 up at Presque Isle, but it seems like it just wasn't a huge abundant year for our snowy owls. And I will play their call for you.
Look like a dog.
And our snowy owls are probably the largest owl, especially by weight. So when you compare a snowy owl to a great horned owl, they might look pretty similar with how tall they are. But snowy owls just have so many feathers and such dense feathers because they're living in the Arctic that by weight they're going to be a lot, not a lot, but a little bit heavier than our great horned owls. So they're considered the largest owl. And as mentioned earlier, and especially because Valentine's Day is right around the corner, I said that great horned owls tend to be laying their eggs right now. And this is actually a photo of a great horned owl up here with 2 youngsters in the nest. And down below, does anyone know what this bird is? Sitting in this nest down here.
Is that a heron?
Yes. Yes, it's a great blue heron. So this owl actually used the heron nest. So great blue herons, their big nesting structures are called rookeries, where they all group to like one tree and all build nests in the same tree. Well, this great horned owl thought it'd be a great idea to just steal that heron nest. It laid its eggs, but then as it's raising its young, those herons started to come back to nest there. And this is actually the rookery that is off of Route 8. So between Barkeyville and Franklin, there's a bridge, and when you're kind of going on Route 8, you can actually see the rookery right there. And right now it's really cool because there's no leaves on the trees. So you can see, I mean, there's probably like 40 to 50 nests right there. It's really impressive.
There's one down in through here somewhere, there's a rookery down there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because there's, years ago, I used to take care of a lady that had Alzheimer's and she lived right over here. And sometimes when I'd come to help her in the morning, there was a heron or 2 down in,
Yeah.
just sitting down in there.
Yeah, yeah. So next time you drive past, see if you can see a great horned owl in there, especially right now. There might be some nesting in there. So this was taken in 2022, is when we had that owl nest there. And I actually passed this rookery because our office sits right on Route 8 up the road from here. So I pass it every day on my way to work, and I always look to see if there's great horned owls in there. And I don't think they returned after that year. But I keep my fingers crossed every year that there might be some great horned owls there. But I thought it was very fitting that, with Valentine's Day right around the corner, and our great horned owls are nesting, I wanted to end with that great photo. Just kind of shows that those owls will pick whatever nest they can find.
I don't blame them.
So, it is 5:25, so I just wanted to leave a couple minutes for questions. I want to thank you all for coming out today. I'm glad that the ice melted and we were all able to get here safely after a rough morning. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you're able to take something home today, maybe a fun fact you learned about an owl, or maybe you'll get to go out in your own yard and try to call in some owls. I'm more than happy if anyone is not going to the library and wants to stick around and try to play a screech owl call. I'm happy to walk around with you guys and play a screech owl call and see if we can call in any owls. It might be a little early. It seems like it's getting kind of dark, so I'm not sure. Like I said, I know there's screech owls here. I wouldn't be surprised if there's barred owls and great horned owls too. But whenever you are calling in owls, if that's something you want to do in your backyard, I would recommend calling in a screech owl first, because if you play a great horned owl call, they are a predator to screech owls, so you're probably going to scare away all of the screech owls. So start smallest to biggest. And then with that, does anyone have any final questions?
Thank you so
Yeah, and feel free to check out our mounts and get another up close look at them. And I also have a couple giveaways. I have, let's see. I brought some goodies. So if anyone wants a floating keychain, I have some keychains. They float. And then I also have, we kind of have a new kind of initiative. It's called 6 Things You Can Do for Wildlife. So I have these bandanas if anyone is interested. And you'll kind of see the 6 different things listed around the side. But I thought it was pretty fitting today. One of those 6 things is installing a nest box. And a lot of owls, especially our barn owls, will use man-made nest boxes. You can also make screech owl nest boxes too. And the Game Commission's website has instructions on how to build nest boxes. You can also purchase them from our Howard nursery, and they're already pre-built. So that's just something you can do in your yard to help attract owls and provide nesting structures for them. But if anyone wants a bandana, I have them as well. So thank you all for your time.